to the Startup Founders Club. Today, I'm joined by Yazz Krishna. Yazz is the former CEO and co-founder of Five Faces, a digital signage and patient engagement solutions company that was selected for the COVID mass vaccination project by New South Wales Health. After exiting his position in 2021, he's moved on to a bunch of different things, not so much retirement. He's now launched AI Carer, an AI-powered health monitoring startup, runs the UQ Ventures Momentum Accelerator, and advises a number of growth ventures, as well as undertaking a PhD in sales. Yazz, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
Mate, thank you for coming on. Known each other a long time. Had to call in a few favors for this one, so appreciate it. Mate, Five Faces and AI Carer, very, very different companies, but can you tell us a little bit about each of them?
Yeah, so Five Faces was the learning. So that was jumping into a startup, building something with a bias. So building something that was fundamentally amazing and then realizing that customers didn't care. And then pivoting my way into figuring out how to make them care and finding that product market fit, raising capital under interesting circumstances, and then just making it work. That was just founder grind. But it was amazing to start a venture, build it, put on people, grow it, exit. All of that was great learning. AI Care is a little different in that I've learned my lessons. I think I've approached this a little bit better, and it seems to be showing that. And this is more of a impact sort of thing that I'd like to do, but of course needs to be profitable and run and grow and all that fun stuff. But AI Care is focused around monitoring the elderly and the vulnerable with the concept of we have wearables. Wearables have a range of data. Can we use that data? Can we build a profile of an individual? And can we tell if something's wrong and let their loved ones know that that's happened and do so remotely? That's what we've proven out over the last few years of R&D. And now we've launched in market. So it's kind of an exciting time.
Awesome, mate. Thank you. Quick pause here. Just FYI, your glasses are reflecting your monitor horrendously. I can see myself in your glasses frames.
But that's what happens. Massive eye bags, man. How's that?
Way better. Just otherwise, the shorts, you're just going to see literally me in your glasses.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, cool.
Mate, so AI Carer, you said this is a bit more of an impact play for you. Can you tell me a little bit about what it is and why you started it?
Yeah, so I was actually a couple of weeks out from Five Faces, and I'm at home, sort of watching TV, having my existential crisis. And my father, who lived behind me at the time, he got himself trapped, and I didn't know about it for hours. So a bunch of hours later, we found him, and he had nearly died, and we had to take him to hospital. And a couple of things happened. First, I don't think I'd be the same person if he did die, because something about watching TV while your old man is dying outside is certainly problematic and traumatic. But also, when he went to the hospital, they found some heart issues. They found some mental health issues as well. And all these things were easy to identify early. But of course, it requires him to go to the doctor, and most people don't want to do that. So it was off the back of that, I was like, well, I'm a data person, I'm an IoT person, all about software. Surely there's a way to answer this. So I went not to build, I made that mistake before. I went to understand the market a lot more, spend some time with customers, figure out what they might need, and ultimately realized there's a gap here. Partnered with some really good founders that are in that space, an ex-Google AI person, Chetan, and so on. And we decided to look at how we can use wearables, because in the market at the moment, there's all these proprietary devices, and they're doing amazing things. But why do we need proprietary devices when we have these amazing sort of watches and things like that that do crazy things? Can we build data models off the back of that? Now, it turns out the answer is yes. And that's sort of the inception or conception of the idea that we're now executing on.
Awesome, mate, and fantastic to see it going so well. Terrible origin story, a lot better than it could have been, obviously, but I know it's important to you. You said something earlier about when you launched Five Faces, you built an amazing, fantastic product, and customers didn't care.
Mm.
We always joke about that. If you build it, they will come. Talk to us a little bit about that, and then what you're doing differently with AI Carer.
Yeah, so if you're a builder, your first instinct is to find the problem that you have an affinity to, and then build the answer to that problem, right? And your assumption is, and there's some sense in that, because you find it to be a problem, many others will find it to be a problem as well, right? So kind of makes sense to do that. Unfortunately, there's a second part of that, which is you can find a problem and it might be shared by many others. But the second part of this is, are people willing to pay to solve that problem? And it is that second part is where that logic and rationale for building starts to fall over. Because often it is not the case that they don't think the problem is real, it's that they either don't want to pay to fix it, or they can't pay to fix it for a myriad of reasons, particularly in business to business, where there's a lot more complexity than this thing saves you or makes you money, therefore you should buy it. It just isn't that simple, right? So that's how we approached Five Faces. Was I was a project manager for an organization. I was doing reasonably well. I had to put up a bunch of screens in a bunch of office sites so the CEO could put messages about himself. And I found it ridiculous that there was all this infrastructure required and software and complexity to put that together. Cloud was just emerging as a thing. So I thought, geez, there's a better way to solve this. So let's go and solve that. And that was a great idea in theory, but it was about 5 years before people started to catch on to that as a problem. And that's a timing element as well. But essentially finding a problem that someone wants to pay for and ideally wants to pay for it now. Right.
Yeah.
Now with AI Care, we've gone to market to find partners that have appreciated the problem, but also have provided clear signs that A, there's funding available and they're willing to fund it if the thing works. And being able to build that relationship 2 years ago and just keep them updated on the journey as it's sort of building out and actually getting them to help us out in those areas, such that when we have launched, we're able to get to market very quickly, which we have with our pilot with Carers Queensland and some of that early validation that we're doing. That wasn't done because we were amazing. It was done because we were able to engage really early and keep them in the loop. So when we went live, we get to make the claim that within a couple of weeks of going live, we have our first enterprise customer.
Yeah, and look, that's a one amazing achievement. Two, amazing design. And I don't think nearly enough SaaS founders do it that way. I know I didn't do it that way. I at least had a bunch of people saying that they wanted to buy something that there wasn't there to buy, but working with the customer directly, or at least one of your, ICP, customers to go and build it, almost guarantees you sales out of the gate. But enterprise sales, very different to B2B small business sales or B2C sales. Both Five Faces and AI Carer are fundamentally enterprise sales driven.
I think AI Care is going to be multimodal. We do have a consumer version. I guess because of my background, I will lean towards enterprise, but this may end up being a old-fashioned SaaS business in the end, or a consumer-driven business. It's yet to be determined, but both of them are working in principle. So we'll see which one sort of yields the greater fruit.
Yeah, cool. Do you have a preference?
Enterprise, but that's more. Look, I've said this story a bunch of times, but when you look at Australia as a market, and typically you start here, I know we need to think global, but usually you have to get your anchoring or your footing somewhere, right? And in the context of Australia, and you look at the spend, a bulk of the B2B spend occurs at ASX 250 and the government, right? And it makes up, I can't remember the number, but it's a very, very large percentage, right? So it makes sense rationally to me as a startup looking for cash and looking for money in order to build and grow and stuff, to try to focus on where the spends are bigger as opposed to wanting to build that bottom up, particularly when the population is quite low in this country. This would be a different advice if we were in the bigger markets, but certainly here I find that seems to be the fastest way and the quickest way we've launched a number of initiatives is through that mentality of creating venture.
Yeah, cool. So I want to drill into your approach on sales a little bit more. I mean, you're obviously doing a PhD on it. You've always been, the sales founder of all of my founder friends. Would you say that you have outside of picking where the money is, do you have a particular view or philosophy about sales?
Oh yeah, so many. But so if we work from founder, right, the first cab off the rank most founders will find is the idea of product-led sales. It's a
Yeah,
common thing, right?
I had that as my next question, but okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, foundationally, it's an amazing thing, right? You're able to put out a product, maybe do some digital ads or some awareness campaigns, and people arrive at your website, they get all the information they need. They're able to transact with you, maybe swipe a credit card, whatever that process is. They're able to onboard themselves or within reason onboard themselves, and off they go. And it's frictionless and doesn't require a human being. This is, of course, a fantastic business model. And yeah, even when you're scaling, you start to know your customer acquisition cost, you start to know your churn, you start to have all these measures that allow you to decide how you want to grow your business, right? The problem happens when a founder's business does not fit the model, where maybe the customer isn't aware of the problem. Maybe the thing that you have requires an education piece. Maybe there's a change management piece. Or maybe it's just complex and you need to hold their hand, right? The moment this happens, founders do one of two things. They either keep squeezing the idea of product-led sales and they either go broke or they find themselves really struggling and pivoting to a sales function, right? Or the alternative is they have to accept what most founders dread is that this is a sales business, right? Which means although you always need to look at what digital can do to facilitate that, lower the sales cycle, help make the decisions quicker, things like that, fundamentally you're going to need a human being, at least for now, to help the customer on that journey from wherever it might be, identification of the problem, understanding the solution set, implementation support, integration or onboarding. Um, and for that, you've got to now look at your sales numbers differently. The reason why I start with product-led sales is the same mentality should apply. It should be extremely data-driven activities, which is great about product-led is you know the numbers, and the numbers can inform everything.
And you
But
don't have
when
to hit the phones.
you know what, sir?
And you don't have to hit the phones, which way too
You
many founders
don't.
hate. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, people assume that because salespeople are selling that they love the phone. No one loves the outbound stuff. I haven't met anyone. It's just you have to do it, or it needs to be a strong consideration in the mix of your funnel, right? So you have the top of funnel stuff, bottom, and then and the end funnel, and all of that needs attention. Um, so my focus is really on that engine. So you're starting your business, you're trying to figure out your top of funnel, right? Which is just where are my customers at? How am I getting them interested in what I do? Now, digital is a component of that. Maybe you can spark curiosity. Maybe you can get a lead in. These are useful. That is when a customer is searching for a problem or searching for a comparable problem and you can get that pull through. This is not always the case, particularly as you move up in enterprise. They're not searching as often as they should, right? So now what do you do? So now this takes you a little bit more old school sales. Are you going to events and promoting there? Does that make sense to you? Is it on the phones? Is it a reseller or a channel partner model? And it's not a one size fits all, but there is a model for almost every sales motion because fundamentally customers are the same.
Yeah. Yeah. People buy from people regardless of the organization that they're at to solve a problem in their budget, in their priority set. So you talked about conferences, you talked about digital, you talked about phone, email, LinkedIn. What about hiring the Rolodex sales guy or girl?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example on that. So we hired a ex Big Four person to join my last business. And they were amazing. So although I'm maybe a sales focused person now, that wasn't always the case. And so I thought I'm going to get this amazing suited up person with amazing hair, really good looking, confident person, right? And I'm going to poach them and I'm going to pay them a stupendous amount of money. And they're going to go out there and sell because they're ex Big Four. They know everyone, right? And it was about 2 months longer than it should have been. But they came to me and said, yes, we need to change the company name. And that's a very interesting piece of feedback. Why? Why do we need to change the company name? That's such a weird thing. And said, well, I'm calling people and they're not taking my meeting. And when I tell them my company name, they go, who or what? And I thought to myself, this is wild, right? Like this is normal. And turns out that person was very used to saying, I'm from a Big Four, and people are taking that call.
Yeah.
Whereas when you say I'm Yazz from blah 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 company and no one's ever heard of me, that is a different motion. There's a different set of strategies in place for them, and this salesperson didn't understand that.
Yeah.
And then there's
It's
your buying
hugely,
relationship. Sorry, go.
I was going to say it's hugely different selling without a brand behind you,
Oh,
as every startup knows. Like it's very different. If you're calling from Google or Microsoft or Amazon or Dropbox, someone is taking that call. The end. If you're calling from WorkGuru or AI Carer, the answer is going to be who? What do you
exactly.
do next? Like it's like you have to be able to deal with that. So hiring somebody ex enterprise, big name, big brand, doesn't necessarily make sense.
No, and you can burn a lot of cash trying to back that because obviously they, and rightfully so, ask for quite a lot of dollars, which in their particular sector makes a bunch of sense, but in a startup has no real value. To your point though, I think this is such an important measure is the realization that in an early startup your brand is kind of meaningless. It's meaningless to you, meaningless to everyone else. To you, I get it. It's your baby. We're in love with it. It's the most important thing in our lives, right? But to the customer, it isn't. And this is why early sales needs to focus around the founder because your brand is meaningless. What is credible in your business is you because you're the silly goose that decided to leave everything and pursue a vision and a single minded focus, right? So I don't know about your business, but I want to know why Tony has left his gig, has left his job, has put everything at risk to build this thing called Worker. Like, what does he know that I don't? Right. And it's that credibility you have as a founder that your business doesn't have in the early stages. And this is why you typically do not succeed in a sales force early on, right? Is actually you haven't solved the credibility problem yet. And that's really hard to do. Like it's really hard to solve that problem, right? And as a founder, there's only one person that's going to be able to do that early stage, and it's you, whether you like it or not, or whether you're a salesperson or not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So as a follow-up, every founder needs to be doing sales, whether it's the technical sales or whether it's generating leads, have to be involved. That is credibility. Completely agree. When should founders stop being the number one salesperson? How do you transition away from it? I know everyone tries to do it too early. We all do because it's particularly if we're product people. Yeah, for me, I'm a product person. My happy space is building things, but we have to do it. How, when, why, and when do you measure if it's a success or not to do that?
No, it's such a great question. So if you put it this way, like you can evaluate a successful coder. There are objective measures you can put in place to at least, do a reasonable job. And the same with most other fields or technical fields or admin roles and things like that. The problem with a salesperson in early stages, past success is not a great predictor of future success in the early stage space, right? So your typical mode of look, I'll just look at your last sales results and compare that. That's a perilous one, right? And now it's really difficult without that to evaluate their sales prowess, right? So, and the second thing is, let's say you were to hire me to work for WorkGuru, but you've never done the sales process. If I haven't sold in a month, does that immediately make me a terrible salesperson? Now, the truth is, you don't know the answer to that. If I didn't sell in 6 months, does that make me a terrible salesperson? Again, we don't know the answer to that. We only know that answer to that if we have a comparable. So, and you don't have that comparable other than maybe looking over the fence at a different company that will be slightly different to the way you are, and so on and so forth, right? So my issue with not doing sales is if you don't know what success looks like from the perspective of time to close, how long it should take. Is generating 5 interest points a week amazing, or is that horrendous? And if all 5 of them said no, is that a customer demographic issue? Is that the salesperson misbehaving? What's all of these challenges, right? So until you have those answers, this is not an outsourceable thing, even if you hire or whatever, right? So to me, it's when the funnel is able to be codified, right? So we call this a sales story. If I can say a sales story, and I can talk about my last business from a sales story. I walk into a shopping center with the digital signage stuff, and I go around to all the retailers and I look for screens that are not working. And I take a photo of the screens that are not working, and I send that as an email out to the retailer. And I look for usually it's a store operations manager, and see if they have a problem. Now, that's your top of funnel, right?
Hmm?
Now, if it's the right one or wrong one, let's put that to one side. That is a sales motion, top of funnel. Now, fundamentally, a salesperson can only do so many of them, right? So let's make up, you can go to one shopping center a day, maybe take 30 photos a day and approach those 30 people. So that's sort of 30 every day or two that you can sort of do. And this builds out your funnel, right?
Yep.
Now, out of those, there'll be some that respond immediately and say, go away, some that won't respond. And then for me, there was 2 more. There's one that said, look, we're already on contract. In which case, when there's a contract, then you do those questions, and that goes into my not now pile.
Hmm?
And I always have that pile, not now, not never, and yes, right? And then out of the 30, on average, 2 of them actually want to take a meeting. Out of those 2, I have to work with them. A typical pilot might be 20 or 30 grand. I was lucky. I was able to commercialize a pilot project. And then a lot of that times it then went to an RFP. The RFP would take 12 to 24 months, which is public. But I get to influence some of that because I did the pilot. This puts me, I usually win 75 to 80% of those. Now, when you break those down into numbers, it's very similar to a digital strategy. I have the salary of the salesperson, the base. I have the number of leads they can generate. I know the percentage, loosely speaking, that kind of come through the pipe. I know the chances of close, and I know the revenue I can hit. When that starts to repeat itself, such that you can pattern that, and that's very complex. It sounds really simple, but to understand those numbers, like this is a lifetime of effort for a startup, right? When you can figure that out and you can go, oh, cool. Top of funnel, I need this many leads every month in order to hit my targets this year. So that means I need 2 salespeople going into 2 different shopping centers, right? Let's say. And I know that's going to get this many meetings, and the salespeople are not very good at that. So now I need like maybe a pre-sales or a technical person or AE or however it is, right? To then take it from there to validate. I might need a technical support person or a project manager to deal with those pilots because those pilots are a thing. And then eventually I'm going to close out. Maybe there's an account manager there. You can see how I have now built out a business model around this function. That is when you have to carve out, because a founder probably does all of those roles or has to. And this is the big point in time where you realize, every founder realizes, oh, geez, I'm not charging enough. Right? That's
Lots do, yeah. Because what you've just said there, and let's just pause there. What you've just said there is field salespeople. And again, this is your model. This is not what everyone does, but you had field salespeople, you had technical salespeople, you had a paid pilot, and I'll talk to you about paid pilots and paid implementation. You had project management, and then you have support. That's 600-700 grand in salaries right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you go back to that. What's the end result? When is the end result coming? And what's the value? And then your fund one's lifetime value of customer, blah, 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 blah. These
all
are
that stuff. Yeah.
And you now have a business, and actually you can look at that business and go, can I afford this? Can I do this in a bootstrap manner? Do I need to raise capital? I love having these conversations now, but often we have those conversations before we start.
Yep.
And we tend to lean into capital raise at that point. Yep. Which is, to me, the absolute wrong time to have that conversation, right? We know nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're going to raise money and then blow that money. And that money's it's an investment. You are trading equity for money. It's not free money. To essentially go and find out these answers that you probably didn't need the money to find if you were willing to sort of put in that energy and effort, right? And then they get stuck. It becomes a problem.
Yep. Yeah, I always like the analogy or the phrase probably that money accelerates what's already working, and if it's not already working, you're lighting money on fire to go faster at nothing. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. In terms of, I just want to talk a couple of things. You said field sales, not something that most people do. I still think it has its place, but it's actually very hard to get people to do that these days. Email, LinkedIn, phone, digital channels, all of those you can approach in the same way, right? It's number of activities, assuming quality of activity, then you should be able to do a number of activities gives you a predictable number of outcomes, and it's percentage from contact to percentage of expression of interest to meeting to percentage of close rate. Is it really as simple as doing enough volume repeatable to try and reverse engineer what those numbers are now and then just trying to tweak each part of that process to improve it? Is it that simple?
Yeah, well, I like the A/B testing model, right? So I'll do a sprint of say cold calls. Now, cold calls are one of the fun ones that everyone says doesn't work, but we do know they work. They just work at such a low percentage that you might think that other ways are more efficient. So that's important to recognize that it does work. You're actually wrong. But what you're really saying is maybe the percentage success rate is that low that it's not a valid go to market for my business. That's totally a fair assumption. But how many have tested that is my question, as opposed to jump to the assumption. So I'd love to test that and go, I've made my 100 calls and they were cold and I didn't do any research before and I got zero results. Great. Well, that's kind of good to know. Do that once or twice, you realize nothing's happening. Great, right? But equally, there's a cold call that's strategic. So I went to WorkGuru's website. I had a look at Tony. I had a look at his LinkedIn. I had a look at his history. I know what sporting club he's in, whatever. And I've done a more strategic approach. And that's still a cold call. But instead of, I can't do 100 of those. Actually, AI might allow me to, but let's say I can't do 100 of those. Maybe I can only do 10 of those. But it is likely my success rate will be higher because now maybe I'm approaching Tony with something a little bit more measured than, a typical cold call script necessarily, right? And I would test that because although you'd think, oh, well, that's a better strategy. Well, if I can do 100 a day and two respond, or I can do 10 a day and one responds, this makes more sense. But you need to measure that and not rely on experts. I dislike the sales expert concept. I believe in A/B testing everything, whether it makes sense or not, and let the data decide which one works, right? And same with go to market. So I always use this example of if I send you an email and you don't really know me, and I say I need $2, you're likely not going to respond to that email, right? If I call you and you answer the phone and I ask you for those $2, you're probably still not going to do it. But I bet you the percentage is higher that you might say yes in phone. If I catch you on the street as you're walking and I walk up to you and I ask you and you get to see my face, and let's say I'm dressed in a certain way or whatever, I bet you if you had $2 in your pocket, the probability is much, much higher that you'll give it to me. This is because, like you said earlier, we buy from people.
Yeah.
We are emotional human beings, right? So obviously, face-to-face is the best way to sell. It just doesn't necessarily scale real well. So this is just about, to me, the number and the success rates between these 3 or 4 different models. And you can test this in equal sprints, very similar to the way you do a digital strategy. You don't just go, I'm going to throw all my money in Meta. You're probably going to test a few things. It just is easier to test these in digital world. But the same process occurs in physical as in events.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Because events are a big one. 5, 10, 15 grand, let's say, for things if you're traveling, 20.
At least.
A ton of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're going to an event, if you're just cold and you're there and you haven't done the prep work to try to get meetings at the event and stuff like that, your success rate goes down. So we still need a sales energy to support the event. And then we're measuring that customer acquisition or number of funnels, all the funnel metrics, and then comparing the two. And the only thing I'll say is there is also a brand component there, where you may feel like going to an event just helps sort of elevate your brand.
Yep.
I have a cautious line on that because again, if it's super early, your brand isn't the thing that's going to work, right? It's going to be the founders' energy and sort of their ability to sell the story that will work.
Yeah.
Can I answer your question? I feel like
Yeah.
I'm just ranting.
Sometimes you've answered a little bit. I want to sharpen up your answers for me. Give me some quick dot point answers. What should you sell? Product, pain relief, complete solution to something. What is it you should focus on? And I know without answering testing, what should you focus on?
Yeah, so this is weird. So there's a couple of emotions that sells more than most, and that's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So we're selling the story that attracts those emotions, or as young people will say, FOMO, right? And that's what you're effectively selling, which is I have the answer to a problem, and that's the why. So I don't care about my solution, but I have the problem. So I want to remind you of the problem. I want you to tell you about how we can solve that problem. But the last bit, and this is a bit often missing, is the why now. What's the compelling event? And I was challenged this in a sales meeting, and I did poorly in my youth. Was the CEO of a very large enterprise? They listened to what I said. And they're like, "You're right, yes. This is definitely something we should look at. I just don't know why I need to do that now and not a few years from now." And I didn't actually know how to answer. I mean,
Yep.
my knee jerk was because I really want you to, but that
I need
wasn't
the money.
probably the best. Yeah, I got targets to hit, mouths to feed, right? But the why now element in your cold approach is so important because doing nothing is it's a very relaxing position,
It,
particularly for a large
it,
enterprise to take.
it's the default. Doesn't matter whether it's large enterprise, small family business. Like 90% of sales processes end in no action. Very simply, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So
Yeah.
sell a solution to a problem, create the urgency. Why now? And that's a really, really tricky one. That's very, very hard for a lot of people to understand. And you kind of said it as a throwaway line, but I think it's really important. Don't sell your solution because no one cares about your product. Sell the problem that it solves. And I think as founders, we love our solutions and we're all very good. Like I've never seen a founder who does a poor technical demonstration of their product and all the cool things that it does and all the features and the buttons and the widgets and the things you can do with it. But I think as a general rule, most founders, unless they've practiced it from a sales perspective, are pretty rubbish at turning that into a business outcome and creating urgency around why you need that business outcome.
Absolutely. I have gone into an organization that I was building the sales function to, a medium-sized organization, about 30 to 50 mil. And one of the first rules I put for them was there's no PowerPoints or material in your first meeting. You're going to go sit down, you're going to talk about what you do, you're going to talk about these things. And anytime the customer speaks, you're going to go quiet and listen really attentively to what's sort of happening. And because they were a solution-based business with a whole range of products, exactly what you said, most people are they're sitting there just waiting to start their PowerPoint, or they're sitting there waiting to launch into a product demo. But that first meeting, particularly at early stages, I need to really understand the customer. But what we found is by doing that, we would say, look, we're going to have a second meeting with you where we will demonstrate our product. But what we wanted to do was understand exactly how you want to use it and what your problems were. So when we deliver a demo, it's tailored to your requirements. Now, this is an enterprise, sort of leans towards the larger enterprise. The values are very high, blah, blah, blah. It's different as you sort of move down the tree. You're trying to process it all. But that was really significant. And it was about a 16% uplift in sales within the 3 months of doing that.
Yeah, wow.
Just because of that connection. It was massive. It was really massive. And I wish I could just say it was my idea from scratch, but no, it was just learnings and readings that I've done over time. I was like, well, that's really smart. And the same thing I found in my world is the moment you get lost in your product, you often disconnect from the customer because the customer doesn't love your product as much as you do. You hope that's the case, and sometimes it's a match made in heaven, but typically you love your world more than the customer does. The customer's just like, that's one problem of like 30 I have, and I just want to fix that problem and get on my way. And that's the second part about SaaS founders. You SaaS founders. And you love like SaaS, pure play SaaS. I just want SaaS and I don't want to do anything else. The customer doesn't care about SaaS. They want an answer to their problem. So if that means it's hardware, service, support, whatever they need, early on anyways, you've got to solve that.
Yep.
Now, you don't have to bastardize your business model. You can find partners to do that for you, bring them together. There's a number of ways to skin this cat. But I think a big SaaS mistake early on is to say, we don't do that.
Yep.
But you can do that yourself or go find out how to do it and then give me a call after. That's a great way to lose a sale or lose an opportunity because the customer doesn't want complexity, they want answers.
Yeah, and services and onboarding. A lot of people try and avoid them because pure play SaaS is pure play SaaS. And depending on your market segment, fine, like product led, 2-person team, you want 1,000 users. Yeah, you're not doing services for that. But mid-market, even larger SMB, enterprise, definitely. Pilots, onboarding, support, consulting work. That services stream can really help fund your business and give you that default alive, right? Yes. People keep buying my service, but I don't get any more clients on the product side of things. I can stay alive until my thing is big enough, until my customer base is big enough. So yeah, I think too many people look down their nose at that, and I think it should definitely be part of enablement of your customer because you're taking away barriers to buying. So how do we make this easier for you to buy, and how do we make more money from it at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, we call this I call it the survival and the optimization lever, right? So if you look at say what venture capital sort of talks about, it's you're unscalable on day one and blah 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 blah, and they're right? Obviously, the easiest scale is in your software product, but to me, that's an optimization lever. That's like you've got to net alive, you're now profitable, and now you're like, okay, now that I'm profitable, I want to find a way to scale this business. And services don't scale. We know this. Don't need to spend time on it, but it allowed me to get to net alive. And it also scales quite well if you're a bootstrapper. Don't throw it away, right? But for me, the survival lever is actually doing things that don't scale, right?
Yeah.
Whatever process it takes for you to get to net alive, that is what you should do. Bootran talks about hitting the streets and selling. There's some really great stories around that. But then when you're profitable, you now have the luxury to sit back and go, okay, I've got to build this. I'm net alive. I don't have to worry about cash next month. My payroll's being hit. And any founder knows that has got there. The moment you get to that stage, it's a different world. The sun opens up. Everything's a lot more colorful. And now you can sit back, look at your business, and say, I really don't like that services component. I might give that to another company. I might outsource that. I might diminish it. I now have the luxury to sit down and strategize and figure out what I want to give away. And I now can build my partner network around that by going to a partner and say, you don't know me, I don't know you, but I got 30 customers doing $30,000 a month with me, and I want to give that to you. You're probably going to build some really great relationships really quickly off that model, right? And that's when you move to the optimization lever, and that's where all of those numbers start to pick up, all of those numbers and the optimization of it. And the great news about that is if you're making money, you can now recruit people that do that really well as well. Yep. Dangerous sort of activity, but you're able, again, you have the luxury to fail and try again, which isn't there, particularly if you're bootstrapping, which I know is which is your preferred option to scale.
Depends on your business, but yes, it is. Yeah. I do love the old bootstrappers. I think a lot of people, as we said already, throw away too much of that services model. And I think one of the key things that I've always found is to get to your first million, in particular, you have to do things that won't scale. You have to do personalization, customization, onboarding, hand-holding a 5-person customer because they're a really good person, and they will give you 20 personal phone calls of recommendation if you hand out their phone number. That kind of stuff that doesn't scale, but it buys you the validity to allow you to go through that optimization process once you pass that. And as you say, once payroll's covered, once you default alive, and once you're not worried about feeding everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that I think founders need to really consider is how to stay net alive. And we talked about this earlier. Even if you're bootstrapping in particular, how do you manage that personal life? So is it possible that you just keep your job and work? You're typically very skilled if you're a founder. So is there a position you can take where you can work on your business and still pay yourself a salary and deal with your family and life? Because then you're not desperate.
Yep.
And this allows you just make better decisions for your business. Making decisions when you're desperate tends to lead to bad decision making, right? So you
Yeah.
can do things on yourself. It's suffering, it's pain, it's hard, but you can do things yourself to make life that little bit easier from a financial perspective before things heat up. Because SaaS, particularly SaaS, takes time to build the amount of MRR or AR that can actually afford you.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot longer than you think usually.
Everything takes a lot longer than you think.
Sure it
That's
does.
rule number one. Uh, team structure. Just quick one
Mm.
for you. Short fire answers. SDRs, AEs, full cycle salespeople, AI agents. What's your
Yeah.
gut? What works these days?
Yeah. So again, it's not a surefire answer in that it's where your problem sits. So as a founder, you're doing all of it, and you'll realize which is the one that's the hardest, which is the one that takes the most time, or for whatever reason, most complex. That's the one that I would hire first. So if getting leads through the door is just really hard, you've navigated that, but that's a beast. We're going to start to put teams in there first.
Yep.
Then we're going to work down the funnel. Sometimes digital gets all your leads, in which case you can maybe even skip an SDR and just have an AE deal with that if the close rates are pretty good. So it's not a clear answer, but if you're doing it yourself for a while, find the ones that are the hardest and package that up and put a person there to do that. So you're free to do the easier ones until the whole value chain is there. And then look at optimize. How can I reduce the headcount to get that sale through digital, through AI, through all of that, right? To me, again, you move to optimization at that point.
100%. So for me, my gut says for most founders who are going to be technical experts, problem experts, and product experts, they should be the AE kind of technical sales close role. For me, my gut says that more people should hire an SDR earlier in their sales team. Just my gut, not something
Yeah.
I've done well myself because we've
No, I think
done everything on
I think I
inbound.
think it's a fair point because you're right that there's a difference in skill set there, right? But I would suggest that the thing about technical founders we talked about earlier is they get lost in the product. And as you move towards enterprise, you can't solo that. So you'll need the commercial human that's hammering numbers, and you need the technical person keeping the technical people. So it becomes more of a team, and you find that the SDR becomes useful all the way through
Yep.
in those scenarios, and then you have to pay them a lot more than a typical sort of SDR. But you're
Why I
spot
don't
on
do
that.
enterprise.
Probably technical founders, right? What was that?
So this is why I don't do enterprise. So it's even harder than normal person sales.
It is harder, it's slower, it's more painful, but the yield is obviously, once you get in, the yield is real good. And the stickiness. For me, it's the stickiness. The sales is really, really hard. Getting the customer onboarded is really, really hard. All of that's really painful. After that's done, I want to have the longest longevity I can. And with
Yeah.
enterprise, unless you've boofed it, you typically have really good longevity with them. And they typically, even though they're late and they take 30 days, 60 days to pay their bills, they're typically more trusting to pay their bills over time.
Yeah. Yeah. The cost to change for them is too high. So
Exactly. Yeah. And you become, if you're doing it right, your account executive becomes an expert in their business. And then there's more reasons than just your solution on why they just want to hang around
yeah.
because new person has to learn and fail and all the rest of it. But getting in, that's the pain.
Cool. Thanks, man. Couple of questions to wrap up. I've got two, especially for you on sales, and then I've got the three that I ask everyone. As a whole, and you've seen a lot of startups and a lot of businesses, what does everyone do well from a sales perspective?
Uh, okay, from founders, and this is a giveaway. The passion comes naturally to most founders, and that is so immensely powerful to get them to believe that journey. Even the ones that are really quiet and shy, they start talking about their product, they tend to become a different human. Lean into that. I think that's amazing. They do that super, super well. Um, and usually, with a bit of prodding, a fair few of them can tell the story of their product really well. And I think that's probably consistent across most founders, right? Then it becomes really varied after. What was your second question? Second part?
So second one for you is, what's the most common failure you see in sales?
Um, for early stage, my product is not ready. That line, um, the validity of that line is rarely true because when they say the product is not ready, by whose standard? If it's the founder standard, it's fair to say your standards are very, very high. But from a market standard, usually your product was ready 6 months ago. So yeah, probably that line I think is very, very common. Particularly the more technical the founder you are, the worse this problem is. It's a failure to launch concept, right?
Love it. Love it. So 3 questions to wrap up. I ask every podcast guest these three questions. On founding a SaaS company, what's the biggest misconception first-time founders have about a SaaS company?
The speed of growth, I've got to say. The number of forecasts from the investment lens and all of that, the number of forecasts where, that hockey stick, the steepness of that hockey stick, it's so wild because they assume that the moment they launch, there's thousands of customers ready to onboard themselves, and that they will do it frictionless, like it'll just happen without a lot of intervention. That's something that typically that day one founder or early founder, and then have the same conversation with that founder 2 years ago, and I'm sure we're both in the same shoes, and you're like, yeah, we were wrong.
I've written 1,000 Excel models. Not one of them has been right. I made so many billion-dollar companies on spreadsheets, man.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Number 2, what is the biggest mistake you've made on your journey?
Ooh, the biggest. There's so many, Tony.
What's one you could tell us about?
From a sales point of view, again, hiring sales too early. But from even more fundamentals, I think knowing your founders, getting your founder vesting agreements, and doing due diligence on your investors if you're going down that pathway. Because it's easy for us to look at investors and go, they have the money, they clearly have the expertise. We don't need to do due diligence on them. It's a two-way street for sure. And founder vesting, we're all founders, we're all friends, we're in it till the end. We have all those like stories, but life happens. And when life happens, it's always good to have a document to fall back on. It's probably the 2 things that I've made as a mistake that I've since corrected ever since, and then the next sort of 5 or 6 things I've done.
Lastly, what is the one piece of advice you feel strongly enough about to give every single founder?
If you want to try this journey, there is no reading or learning that will help you with that decision. You've got to do it, and the reading supports that, right? But number of founders that have told me for years that I would like to do it, I really want to do it, I really want to do it, but they're waiting on something, I would tell that founder, just go in and you'll figure it out.
Can't learn it in a book.
Yeah. If only.
I've read them all. They don't help.
I've read most of them. They're all great. They're all pieces of knowledge, but I don't know if any of those would have helped me make a decision. I would argue, because of the books that are good talk about the bad as well as the good. If anything, I might argue that by reading a lot, you might not want to go on this journey. And as someone who's been on a few of these, I can tell you I could never go back to any other lifestyle. So It's definitely worth it for me, and I'm sure it is for you too.
It is now.
It is now.
It is now. Not always. Yazz, thanks very much for coming on. Been an absolute pleasure for having you. Look forward to seeing AI Care grow hugely over the next year or so, and look forward to having you back on when you hit your next couple of milestones.
Thanks, mate, and congratulations on the podcast. It's awesome.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Cheers.